Jake Morrison was sleeping when the emergency alarm woke him up. The sound was loud and sharp, cutting through the quiet of his small cabin on the diplomatic ship New Horizon. He sat up fast, his heart beating hard. Emergency alarms only went off when something very bad was happening. He grabbed his uniform from the chair next to his bed and put it on quickly. The ship felt different somehow, like everyone on board was moving with purpose and fear. Jake had been a diplomat for 20 years, and he knew the feeling of bad news coming. Lieutenant Amy Rogers was waiting for him outside his cabin. Her face was pale and her hands were shaking a little. Amy never looked scared, but she looked scared now. "Sir, you need to see this right away," she said. Her voice was tight and controlled, but Jake could hear the worry underneath. "We got a transmission from Earth Command about 2 hours ago." They walked quickly through the narrow hallways of the ship. Other crew members moved past them, their faces serious and worried. Jake could feel the tension in the air like electricity before a storm. The communications room was small and dark, lit only by the glow of computer screens. The main display showed a frozen image that made Jake's stomach drop. It was a human colony, but something was very wrong with the picture. "Show me," Jake said. Amy pressed a button, and the image came to life. What Jake saw made him feel sick. Buildings were on fire. People were running and screaming. In the sky above the burning city, strange ships with sharp edges were flying in formation. Jake recognized them immediately as Zephyrian warships. "This is New Eden Colony," Amy said quietly. Population was about 70,000 people. The attack happened 16 hours ago. The video showed Zephyrian soldiers walking through the streets. They were tall and thin, with gray skin and no hair. They wore black armor that made them look like death itself. Jake watched in horror as the soldiers herded human civilians into groups. Men, women, and children were being separated from each other. Some people were crying. Others looked too shocked to make any sound. "Are there more colonies?" Jake asked. Though he was afraid to hear the answer, Amy nodded and changed the display. Freedom Station and Haven's Rest were also attacked. Same pattern, same timing. The Zephyrians hit all 3 colonies at exactly the same time. Jake sat down hard in a chair. 3 colonies. That meant almost 200,000 human civilians were under attack. These weren't military bases or government facilities. They were farming communities and small towns where families had gone to build new lives. "What about survivors?" he asked. Amy's face got even more pale. "Some escaped in ships, but most didn't make it out." The Zephyrians set up blockades around each colony before they attacked. They planned this very carefully. Jake watched more footage on the screen. He saw a school that had been bombed. The playground where children used to play was now a crater filled with twisted metal and broken concrete. He saw a hospital with Zephyrian soldiers dragging doctors and nurses outside. He saw families being torn apart as soldiers took the adults one way and the children another way. "Sir," Amy said softly, "there's more." She changed the display again. This time it showed what looked like a prison camp. Humans were standing behind tall fences topped with razor wire. They looked thin and scared. Zephyrian guards walked around the outside of the fence carrying weapons. "The survivors are being used as workers," Amy explained. "The Zephyrians are making them build weapons and equipment. Anyone who tries to resist gets killed immediately." Jake felt anger building in his chest like a fire. He had spent 10 years working with the different alien species in the galaxy. He had believed that most of them were reasonable beings who wanted peace. He had trusted the Galactic Council to keep order and prevent exactly this kind of attack. "Have we contacted the Galactic Council?" he asked. Amy nodded. "Earth Command sent messages to all the major species. Most of them haven't responded yet. The ones who have responded are calling for calm and suggesting we try to negotiate with the Zephyrians." Jake stood up and walked to the display screen. He put his hand against the cool surface and stared at the images of his people suffering. These weren't numbers in a report or political problems to be solved. These were real people with real families who were being hurt and killed while the galaxy's leaders talked about staying calm. "Sir," Amy said carefully, There's something else you need to know. The Zephyrians aren't just attacking our people. They're destroying everything human they can find. Libraries, museums, schools, anything that shows human culture or history. They're trying to erase us completely. Jake closed his eyes and took a deep breath. When he opened them again, Amy could see something different in his face. The diplomatic calm that he always wore was gone. In its place was something harder and more dangerous. "Set course for the Galactic Council Station," he said. "Maximum speed." "Sir, the Council hasn't agreed to see you yet. They said they're still discussing whether this situation requires their attention." Jake turned to look at her. "They'll see me. And if they won't listen to Ambassador Morrison, the diplomat, then they'll listen to Jake Morrison, the human being whose people are being murdered while they discuss whether it requires their attention." Amy had never heard Jake talk like this before. In all the years she had worked with him, he had always been patient and careful with his words. He believed in working within the system and finding peaceful solutions to problems. But something had changed in the last few minutes, something fundamental. "Amy," he said quietly, "send a message to Earth Command. Tell them that diplomatic solutions may not be enough this time. Tell them to be ready for other options." Amy understood what he meant. Other options meant war. It meant human ships with human weapons fighting back against the Zephyrians. It meant abandoning 20 years of careful diplomacy and peace-building. "Are you sure, sir?" she asked. Jake looked at the screen one more time. A Zephyrian soldier was pushing an old human woman to the ground. She looked like she could be someone's grandmother. She looked scared and helpless. "I'm sure," Jake said. "The Zephyrians want to see what happens when you corner a human. They're about to find out." The New Horizon changed course and began its journey to the Galactic Council Station. Behind them, human colonies burned and human families suffered. Ahead of them waited a council of alien species who had no idea that everything was about to change. Jake Morrison had spent his entire career believing in peace and diplomacy. But sometimes when evil people do evil things to innocent people, peace is not enough. Sometimes the only way to protect the people you love is to fight back. With everything you have, the galaxy was about to learn that lesson the hard way. The Galactic Council Station was the largest structure Jake Morrison had ever seen. It looked like a giant metal flower floating in space, with dozens of arms reaching out in all directions. Each arm was big enough to hold a small city. Ships from hundreds of different worlds came and went from docking bays that looked like tiny dots from far away. Jake stood at the window of the New Horizon as they approached the station. Normally, seeing this amazing place filled him with hope. It represented everything good about different species working together. Today, it just made him angry. While aliens debated and discussed in comfortable meeting rooms, human children were dying in Zephyrian prison camps. "Sir, we've been cleared to dock," Amy Rogers said behind him. "The council has agreed to see you, but they're calling it a fact-finding hearing, not an emergency session." Jake turned away from the window. "A fact-finding hearing. 200,000 humans are dead or enslaved, and they want to find facts." Amy looked uncomfortable. "Sir, maybe we should be careful about how we approach this. These beings don't think the same way humans do. They might need time to understand the situation." Jake picked up his diplomatic case and headed for the door. "They'll understand it perfectly when I'm done explaining it to them." The docking process took 30 minutes. Jake spent the time reviewing the footage and reports from the 3 colonies. Every time he thought he had seen the worst of it, he found something that made him even more angry. Pictures of Zephyrian soldiers burning human books. Videos of families being separated forever. Reports of humans being worked to death in the prison camps. When they finally walked off the ship, Jake was met by an alien he recognized. Commander Blip was from the Nexus Collective, the same species that provided the current High Counselor. Blip looked like a tall crystal sculpture that could walk and talk. His voice came from speakers built into his body. "Ambassador Morrison," Blip said in his mechanical voice, "the Council is ready to hear your presentation. Please remember that today's session is being recorded for the official records." Jake nodded. "Good, I want everyone in the galaxy to hear what I have to say." They walked through long hallways filled with aliens from dozens of different worlds. Jake saw the fish-like Aquarians swimming in mobile water tanks. He passed a group of saurians, the reptile people who looked like walking dinosaurs. There were ethereals, beings made of gas who floated in special containment suits. All of them stared at Jake as he walked by. News of the attacks had already spread throughout the station. The council chamber was enormous. Seats were arranged in circles, each one designed for a different type of alien body. At the center was a speaking platform where Jake would make his presentation. Above everything was a dome made of transparent metal that showed the stars outside. High Counselor Vexthara was already in her seat when Jake entered. She was 12 feet tall and looked like she was made of blue crystal. Light moved through her body in patterns that were supposed to show her emotions, though Jake had never been able to read them properly. "Ambassador Morrison," she said, her voice echoing through translation devices, "please present your evidence regarding the recent incident involving the Zephyrian Empire." Jake walked to the center platform and activated the holographic display system. Images of the burning colonies appeared in the air above him, large enough for every council member to see clearly. "Honorable counselors," Jake began, "what you're seeing is not an incident, this is genocide." The word genocide caused murmurs throughout the chamber. Jake ignored them and continued his presentation. He showed footage of the attacks, pictures of the prison camps, and reports from the few survivors who had escaped. "The Zephyrian Empire attacked 3 peaceful human colonies without warning," Jake said. "They killed 70,000 civilians in the first day. The survivors are being used as slave labor. This was not a military action. This was the systematic murder of innocent people." Jake looked around the chamber, trying to read the faces of the different alien species. Most of them seemed uncomfortable, but not in the way he had hoped. They looked like people who had been asked to deal with something unpleasant that they would rather ignore. Counselor Glooptar of the Aquarians was the first to respond. He was a large fish-like creature who spoke through bubbles in his water tank. "Ambassador Morrison, territorial disputes between young species are quite common. Have you considered that there might be misunderstandings that could be resolved through negotiation?" Jake stared at the Aquarian in disbelief. "Misunderstandings? You think the murder of children is a misunderstanding?" General Hishkar of the Saurians spoke next. He was a large reptile with sharp teeth and cold yellow eyes. The Zephyrians claimed these were military installations hidden among civilian populations. "Do you have proof that these were truly peaceful colonies?" Jake felt his hands shake with anger. He activated a new holographic display that showed a human school. The building was small and painted bright colors. There was a playground with swings and slides. "This is a military installation, General? These children were soldiers?" He showed them a hospital next. Doctors and nurses were being dragged away by Zephyrian soldiers while patients lay helpless in their beds. "Are these wounded humans enemy combatants?" But the council members continued to ask questions that missed the point completely. They wanted to know about trade agreements and territorial boundaries. They discussed the economic impact of getting involved in the conflict. They suggested forming a committee to study the situation over the next 6 months. Jake realized with growing horror that they simply did not care. To them, human suffering was just another political problem to be managed carefully. They were more worried about upsetting the Zephyrians than about stopping a genocide. The worst moment came when Counselor Theldon of the Ethereal Communion spoke. Theldon was a being made of gas who lived inside a special suit. His translated voice was soft and condescending. "Perhaps," Theldon said slowly, "if humanity had not been so aggressive in expanding into contested territories, this unfortunate incident could have been avoided entirely." The chamber fell silent. Jake stood frozen at the center platform, staring at the gaseous alien who had just blamed humans for their own genocide. Around the chamber, other council members nodded in agreement. Unfortunate incident. That's what they were calling it. The murder of 70,000 people and the enslavement of over 100,000 more was just an unfortunate incident that could have been avoided if humans had been more careful about where they built their Holmes. Jake felt something break inside his chest. For 10 years he had worked with these beings. He had believed they were capable of justice and compassion. He had trusted them to help protect innocent people from exactly this kind of attack, but now he understood the truth. They didn't see humans as equals. They saw them as a young, violent species that needed to be controlled and managed. When humans were murdered, it was regrettable but probably deserved. When human children were enslaved, it was an unfortunate consequence of human aggression. Jake looked around the chamber one more time. He saw boredom on some faces, mild concern on others, and complete indifference on most. These beings would never help humanity. They would form committees and hold discussions while human families were torn apart and human culture was erased from existence. "I see," Jake said quietly into the microphone. His voice carried to every corner of the chamber. "I understand now." "Hi." Counselor Vexthara leaned forward. "Do you have any other evidence to present, Ambassador?" Jake smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Oh yes, Counselor. I have one more thing to present. But first, I think it's time you all learned something important about human beings." The council members looked at each other uncertainly. Something in Jake's voice had changed. The diplomatic politeness was gone, replaced by something harder and more dangerous. Jake Morrison the diplomat was done talking. Now it was time for Jake Morrison the human to speak. Jake Morrison walked slowly to the center of the speaking platform. The council chamber was completely quiet now. Something about the way he moved made every alien in the room pay attention. His diplomatic smile was gone. His polite manner had disappeared. What remained was something that made several species shift nervously in their seats. "Honored council members," Jake said, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "For 10 years I have stood before you as a representative of humanity. I have spoken your language of diplomacy and compromise. I have followed your rules and respected your traditions. I have believed that reason and discussion could solve any problem." He paused and looked around the chamber, making eye contact with as many council members as possible. "But today, something has changed. Today, you have shown me who you really are. And now, I think it's time I showed you who we really are." Jake activated the holographic display again, but this time the images were different. Instead of burning colonies, the display showed scenes from human history. Ancient warriors with swords and shields, medieval knights in armor charging into battle, soldiers fighting in great wars with weapons that could destroy entire cities. "You see us as a young species," Jake continued. "You think we are new to war and violence. You believe we can be controlled and managed like children who don't know any better. But you have made a fundamental error in your understanding of human beings." The images changed to show human exploration of their own planet. Humans climbing the highest mountains, diving to the bottom of the deepest oceans, crossing frozen wastelands and burning deserts. Humans building cities in places where no life should be able to survive. "We did not evolve as prey animals," Jake said, his voice getting stronger. "We did not develop as peaceful philosophers or gentle farmers. We are the species that climbed to the top of the food chain on a planet where everything was trying to kill us. We are the predators who learned to hunt in packs and use tools to kill creatures 10 times our size." Several council members were looking uncomfortable now. The Aquarian Glooptar was making nervous, bubbling sounds in his water tank. The ethereal Felden-esque gas form was shifting colors in what Jake knew was a sign of anxiety. "You want to know why humans have spread so quickly through the galaxy?" Jake asked. "It's because we are very good at one thing above all others. We are very good at killing things that threaten us. For millions of years, anything that wanted to hurt human families had to go through human warriors first. And most of the time, those threats didn't survive the experience." Jake changed the display to show modern human technology. Spaceships that looked peaceful from the outside but had hidden weapon systems. Research stations that could be converted to military bases in hours. Trade vessels that could carry entire armies if needed. "We came to you in peace because we chose to," Jake said. We offered friendship and cooperation because we wanted to build something better than the violence of our past. We believed that advanced civilizations had moved beyond the need for war and conquest. His voice got quieter, more dangerous. But you have taught us an important lesson today. You have shown us that when evil beings do evil things, advanced civilizations don't stop them. They form committees. They schedule discussions. They blame the victims for their own suffering. War Commander Zektar of the Zephyrian Empire was sitting in the section reserved for observers. He was a tall, thin being with gray skin and black eyes. Unlike the other aliens in the chamber, he didn't look nervous. He looked interested, as if he was watching an entertaining show. Jake turned to face the Zephyrian directly. Commander, your people made a choice when they attacked our colonies. They decided to test what would happen if they murdered human children and enslaved human families. They wanted to see how we would respond. Jake's smile was cold and predatory. Congratulations, you're about to find out. He activated his communication device and sent a coded message to Earth. 3 simple words that would change everything. Diplomacy has failed. You see, Jake continued, addressing the entire council now, you have all made the same mistake. You assumed that because we came to you in peace, we were naturally peaceful. You thought that because we followed your rules, we were weak. You believe that because we negotiated instead of fighting, we had forgotten how to fight. The holographic display now showed images of human military forces that had been hidden throughout the galaxy. Ships that had been disguised as exploration. Vessels revealed massive weapon systems. Bases that had been listed as research facilities open to show armies of human soldiers. Space stations that had seemed focused on trade and diplomacy transformed into military command centers. We never forgot how to fight, Jake said. We just hoped we wouldn't have to. We spent 10 years building relationships with you because we wanted to find a better way. We believed that intelligent species could solve their problems without violence. High Counselor Vexthera S. crystal body was flashing warning colors. Ambassador Morrison, are you threatening this council? Jake laughed, and the sound made several aliens jump in their seats. Threatening you? No, Counselor. I'm educating you. You want to understand the situation you've created, so let me explain it in terms you can understand. He gestured to the images still floating above the platform. Right now, all across the galaxy, human families are receiving news about what happened to our colonies. They're learning that their government asked for help from the galactic community, and that community responded by forming a committee to study the problem. Jake's voice got harder. They're learning that while their children were being murdered, alien politicians debated economic impacts. They're discovering that when human families were torn apart, the response was to suggest that maybe humans deserved it for being too aggressive. The chamber was completely silent now. Even the mechanical sounds of life support systems seemed muted. You have awakened something in humanity that we have spent centuries trying to control, Jake continued. For generations, we have taught our children that violence should be the last resort. We have built a civilization based on the idea that problems can be solved through reason and compromise. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle over the chamber. But you have just taught an entire species that reason and compromise don't work when dealing with evil. You have shown us that sometimes the only language that monsters understand is violence. Jake turned off the holographic display and stood, alone in the center of the platform. The Zephyrian Empire wanted to know what would happen if they pushed humans to the edge. You are all about to discover the answer to that question. He looked directly at War Commander Zektar. Commander, I suggest you contact your leadership immediately. Tell them that they have approximately 72 hours to release every human prisoner, evacuate every human world they have occupied, and surrender themselves for trial. If they refuse, they will learn why human beings conquered an entire planet and reached for the stars. Jake picked up his diplomatic case and headed for the exit. This council has made its position clear. You will not help humanity defend itself. You will not intervene to stop genocide. You will not lift a finger to save innocent lives. He stopped at the entrance to the chamber and turned back one last time. Fine, we'll handle this ourselves. But remember this day, because you have just witnessed the end of human diplomacy and the beginning of something much more dangerous. Jake Morrison walked out of the council chamber, leaving behind 10 years of careful relationship building and patient negotiation. Behind him, the assembled representatives of 47 alien species sat in stunned silence, finally beginning to understand what they had unleashed. The message from Jake Morrison reached Earth Command exactly 18 minutes after he left the council chamber. Admiral Lisa Hayes was in her office reviewing fleet reports when her communication system flashed with the highest priority alert code. She had been expecting this call, but seeing the actual words still made her heart race. Diplomacy has failed. Lisa stood up and walked to the large window that showed Earth's orbital shipyards. What looked like peaceful construction facilities were about to reveal their true purpose. She had spent 5 years preparing for this moment, hoping it would never come but knowing it probably would. "Computer, execute Protocol 7, she said clearly. "Protocol 7 confirmed," the artificial voice replied. "All human military assets are now active. Estimated deployment time, 6 hours. Across the galaxy, humans received the signal almost instantly. Ships that had been exploring distant star systems suddenly changed course and headed for predetermined coordinates. Research stations began powering up weapon systems that had been hidden for years. Trade vessels opened secret compartments containing fighter squadrons and assault troops. Captain Nick Carter was commanding the exploration ship Defiance when the message arrived. His crew had been mapping a nebula near the outer rim, far from any conflict. Nick had joined the space service to see new worlds and discover amazing things among the stars. But like every human ship captain, he had other orders that he hoped he would never have to follow. "All hands, this is the captain," Nick announced over the ship's communication system. "We have just received activation orders. This is not a drill. All civilian personnel report to secure areas immediately." The transformation of the Defiance took less than 30 minutes. External panels slid away to reveal massive railguns and missile launchers. The cargo bays opened to show rows of fighter ships and drop pods filled with Marines. The peaceful exploration vessel became a warship capable of destroying entire fleets. Nick's first officer, Commander Sarah Blake, came to the bridge carrying a sealed case that had been locked in the ship's safe for 3 years. Inside were target coordinates and battle plans that only Nick had been authorized to see. "Sir, our primary target is the Zephyrian military base at Kepler Station," Sarah reported. "Intelligence suggests it's where they're holding about 15,000 human prisoners." Nick nodded and looked at the tactical display. Kepler Station was heavily defended with orbital weapons platforms and a fleet of Zephyrian warships. Under normal circumstances, attacking it would be suicide for a single human ship, but the Defiance wasn't going in alone. "Communications, contact the fleet," Nick ordered. "Let's see who else got the call." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Dozens of human ships appeared on the scanner, all converging on the same target coordinates. Ships that the galaxy knew as peaceful traders and explorers were revealing themselves as part of the most powerful military force anyone had ever seen. Admiral Hayes watched the fleet deployments from her command center on Earth. Each ship captain was reporting ready status as they reached their assigned positions. The plan they were executing had been developed over years of careful preparation, but nobody had expected to use it so soon. "Admiral," her aide Colonel Ben Murphy said, "we're receiving surrender requests from several Zephyrian outposts. They're asking for terms." Lisa looked at the tactical display showing human forces throughout the galaxy. What did Ambassador Morrison tell them? 72 hours to release all prisoners and surrender for trial. Ben replied. Lisa checked the mission clock. They have 67 hours left. Until then, we follow the plan exactly as written. The first strike came without warning. A Zephyrian patrol ship was conducting routine surveillance near one of the attacked human colonies when it simply disappeared in a flash of nuclear fire. The explosion was visible from the surface of the planet below, a bright star that burned for 3 seconds before fading away. War Commander Zektar was in his flagship when the reports started coming in. Zephyrian military bases throughout the galaxy were being attacked by human forces that seemed to appear from nowhere. Ships that intelligence had classified as harmless exploration vessels were destroying fortified positions with frightening efficiency. "How is this possible?" Zektar demanded. "Our intelligence said the humans had a small fleet of lightly armed ships." His tactical officer, a young Zephyrian named Vexter, was staring at the incoming reports with disbelief. "Sir, it appears their entire civilian fleet was actually military vessels in disguise. Every human ship we've encountered has hidden weapon systems." Zektar studied the battle reports. Human forces were moving with perfect coordination, striking multiple targets simultaneously across thousands of light years. This wasn't a hastily organized response to the colony attacks. This was a military operation that had been planned for years. "Get me a communication channel to the human command," Zektar ordered. "I want to speak with their military leaders." But the humans weren't accepting surrender calls yet. They were sending a different kind of message entirely on New Eden Colony. The surviving humans in the prison camps heard explosions in the distance. Zephyrian guards were running around in panic, receiving orders they couldn't understand. Then the sky lit up with the trails of human dropships coming down through the atmosphere. Mary Johnson had been a teacher before the Zephyrians attacked her colony. Now she was prisoner number 4847 in Camp 7, building weapons for the same aliens who had destroyed her school. She looked up through the fence as human soldiers in combat armor landed nearby and began attacking the guard towers. The battle for the prison camp lasted exactly 11 minutes. The Zephyrian guards were trained to fight other Zephyrians using Zephyrian tactics. They had no idea how to handle human Marines who moved like shadows and struck without warning. Lieutenant Pete Davis led the assault team that breached the main gate. He had volunteered for this mission because his own sister lived on Haven's Rest Colony, one of the other human settlements that had been attacked. "All prisoners moved to the center of the compound," Pete announced through his suit's speakers. "Human rescue forces are here. You're going home." Mary watched in amazement as human soldiers systematically destroyed every Zephyrian position in the camp. These weren't the peaceful explorers and diplomats that aliens knew about. These were warriors who moved with deadly precision and showed no mercy to their enemies. Similar scenes were playing out across the galaxy. Human forces were striking Zephyrian positions with overwhelming force and perfect timing. Prison camps were liberated. Military bases were destroyed. Zephyrian ships were hunted down and eliminated before they could escape or call for help. The aliens of the Galactic Council watched the reports coming in with growing horror. They had dismissed humans as a young species that could be ignored or controlled. Now they were seeing the true nature of the beings they had underestimated. High Counselor Vexthara called an emergency session as reports of human military actions flooded in from across the galaxy. The same chamber where Jake Morrison had been dismissed and ignored was now filled with panicked aliens trying to understand what was happening. "The humans have deceived us," General Hishkar of the Saurians declared. "They claimed to be peaceful explorers, but they were building a war machine." Counselor Glooptar S. water tank was bubbling frantically. "We must demand an explanation." This level of military preparation suggests they were planning aggression all along. But Counselor Theldon, the ethereal who had blamed humans for their own genocide, was studying the tactical reports more carefully. "No," he said quietly, "look at their targets. They're only attacking Zephyrian positions. They're only liberating their own people. This isn't aggression. This is rescue." The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The humans hadn't been planning to conquer the galaxy. They had been preparing to defend themselves if diplomacy failed. Every ship, every weapon, every soldier had been positioned to respond to exactly this kind of situation. Jake Morrison had tried to warn them. He had asked for help stopping a genocide, and they had formed a committee instead. Now they were watching. The consequences of that decision play out across the galaxy. The human war machine was fully awakened now, and it was more terrifying than anyone had imagined. But the most frightening part wasn't the weapons or the ships or the perfectly coordinated attacks. The most frightening part was that the humans were just getting started. 6 months after Jake Morrison walked out of the Galactic Council chamber, the Zephyrian Empire no longer existed. Their homeworld was now under human control. Their military had been completely destroyed, and their leaders were awaiting trial for genocide. The speed and efficiency of their defeat had shocked every species in the galaxy. War Commander Zektar sat in a human prison cell, staring at the walls that would confine him for the rest of his life. He had been captured during the final battle for the Zephyrian capital, when human forces had overwhelmed the planet's defenses in less than 4 hours. The beings he had dismissed as weak and primitive had crushed his entire civilization without breaking stride. Jake Morrison stood outside Zektar's cell, looking through the transparent barrier at the alien who had started this war. The Zephyrian looked smaller now, broken by the realization that his people's empire had been built on a foundation of lies about their own superiority. "Do you understand now?" Jake asked quietly. Zektar looked up with his black eyes. "Your species hid your true nature from us. You pretended to be peaceful while building a war machine." Jake shook his head. "We didn't hide anything. We genuinely wanted peace. Every ship, every weapon, every soldier was positioned to defend our people if diplomacy failed. We hoped we would never need them. Then why did you build them at all?" Zektar asked. Jake was quiet for a moment. "Because we know what we are. We know that in a galaxy full of predators, the only way to protect the people you love is to be the most dangerous predator of all." The transformation of human society had been complete and irreversible. The peaceful explorers and diplomats were gone, replaced by a species that viewed the galaxy through the lens of threat assessment and military strategy. Every human colony now had orbital defense platforms. Every human ship carried enough firepower to destroy a small fleet. Every human child learned to shoot before they learned to read. Admiral Lisa Hayes had been promoted to Supreme Commander of Human Space Forces. From her new headquarters on a massive space station orbiting Earth, she coordinated the defense of human territory across hundreds of star systems. The gentle woman who had once hoped for peaceful exploration was now the most feared military leader in the galaxy. "Status report," Lisa said to her aide, Colonel Ben Murphy. "All human colonies are secure and defended," Ben replied. "The Aquarian Federation has requested a meeting to discuss trade agreements. The Saurian Republic is asking about a mutual defense treaty. The Ethereal Communion wants to send an ambassador to formally apologize for their council representatives." Comments. Lisa nodded but didn't look pleased. "And the others?" 17 species have formally requested that we limit our military expansion. They're concerned about our rapid growth and the number of ships we're building. Lisa walked to the large viewing window that showed Earth and its surrounding space. Where once there had been a few orbital stations, now there were hundreds of military facilities, shipyards, and defense platforms. The transformation had been necessary, but it had cost humanity something important. "They should be concerned," Lisa said. "We're not the same species we were a year ago. We can't go back to being the peaceful explorers who trusted the galaxy to protect us." The Galactic Council had been calling emergency sessions almost weekly since the end of the war. The chamber where Jake Morrison had been dismissed and ignored was now filled with alien representatives trying to figure out how to deal with humanity's new position of strength. High Counselor Vexthara stood before the assembled council, her crystal body flashing with colors that indicated stress and uncertainty. "The human military expansion continues unchecked. They now possess the largest fleet in the galaxy and show no signs of slowing their shipbuilding programs." General Hishkar of the Saurians shifted nervously in his seat. "Perhaps we should consider formal restrictions on their activities. The other species are becoming concerned about human intentions." But Counselor Theldon, the ethereal who had learned his lesson about underestimating humans, disagreed. Any attempt to restrict human activities would be seen as a threat. "We have already seen what happens when humans feel threatened. The debate continued for hours, but everyone in the chamber knew the truth. The balance of power in the galaxy had shifted permanently. Humanity was no longer a junior species asking for help and protection. They were now the dominant military force, and every other species had to adjust to that reality. Jake Morrison walked into the council chamber exactly 1 year after his dramatic exit, but this time he wasn't alone. Admiral Hayes walked beside him along with General Pete Collins, the commander of the Human Marine Corps. The message was clear: diplomacy was still possible, but it would be backed by overwhelming force. The chamber was completely silent as Jake approached the speaking platform. Every alien representative remembered his last appearance here, when they had dismissed human suffering as an unfortunate incident. Now they waited nervously to hear what he had to say. "Honored counselors," Jake began, his voice carrying easily through the chamber, "I returned to address this council exactly 1 year after you refused to help my people during their darkest hour. Many things have changed since then." Jake activated the holographic display, showing images of human military forces throughout the galaxy. Thousands of warships, orbital weapons platforms, and military installations spread across dozens of star systems. It was a force capable of conquering any single species or defending against any possible threat. "You taught us an important lesson about the nature of galactic politics," Jake continued. "You showed us that, in a universe full of predators, the only species that survive are those strong enough to protect themselves." High Counselor Vexthara leaned forward. "Ambassador Morrison, surely with the Zephyrian threat eliminated, we can return to peaceful cooperation?" Jake's smile was polite but cold. "The Zephyrian threat was never the real problem, Counselor. The real problem was a galactic community that would stand by and watch genocide happen while debating the economic implications of intervention." He looked around the chamber, making eye contact with as many council members as possible. "Humanity learned that we cannot depend on the kindness or justice of other species. We learned that the only beings we can truly trust to protect human families are other humans." Jake gestured to Admiral Hayes and General Collins. "These officers represent the new reality of human foreign policy. We will be happy to trade with species who treat us fairly. We will defend species who stand with us when evil threatens the innocent. But we will never again put the lives of our people in the hands of beings who view human suffering as an acceptable cost of political stability." Counselor Gluptar made nervous bubbling sounds. "But surely, Ambassador, you don't intend to threaten the entire galaxy?" Jake shook his head. "We're not threatening anyone, Counselor. We're simply making our position clear. Humanity will never again be the victim of genocide while the galaxy's leaders form committees to study the problem." He paused, letting his words sink in. "Every species in this chamber has a choice to make. You can be our allies, trading partners, and friends. You can work with us to build a galaxy where innocent people are protected from those who would harm them, or you can go your own way and leave us to go ours." Jake picked up his diplomatic case and headed for the exit. "But understand this. The age of human diplomacy is over. The age of human strength has begun. We tried being the species that asked politely for help and got ignored. Now we're the species that doesn't need to ask." As Jake, Admiral Hayes, and General Collins left the chamber, the assembled alien representatives sat in stunned silence. The gentle humans who had once begged for their protection were gone forever. In their place was a species that had learned the most important lesson in galactic politics: the strong do what they can, and the weak suffer what they must. The galaxy would have peace, but it would be a human peace, enforced by human strength and guided by human values. And across the stars on 1,000 different worlds, alien children would grow up learning a simple truth about the species from Earth: never corner a human, because you won't survive what emerges from that corner.